There's a top 100 list of Bitcoin treasury companies, and Coincilium sits at 70 with 182 Bitcoin, and the top 100 hold, I think, 950,000 Bitcoin collectively. So it is a race. It's a digital gold rush. It's a race to acquire as much as you can, but in an accretive dilution methodology.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by Coincilium Group Executive Chairman Malcolm Pallay and also Strategic Advisor James Van Straten. Malcolm, James, very good to speak with you. Malcolm, I'll start with you. There've been big changes to Coincilium since we last spoke. Take us through what's been happening.
Okay, so thanks very much for having us on, Stephen. Coincilium, as you know, is a veteran in the digital asset space, and we've kind of adapted and moved and been very kind of nimble in what we're doing following various trends. But the most recent iteration of what we're doing is when we noticed that the market, particularly in the US, was developing for Bitcoin treasuries, which is effectively companies that own Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin and build their treasury with Bitcoin, was becoming a thing. It's in the UK, it was slightly different to the US because we've got very clear regulations, which have till recently and certainly even now prohibited retail investors from participating effectively in this wonderful growth we're seeing in the value and the adoption of Bitcoin. So we decided to set up a Bitcoin treasury division within Coincilium as a discrete company. The key to doing it that way was because it gives us optionality. It also is seen as the actual company. It's 100% owned by Coincilium, and it gives us the opportunity to kind of model our proposition so that it works with the current regulation without us actually having to kind of appear like we're doing something as a token gesture to the regulators, because the company that is involved in this space and is being viewed by investors and valued to a degree on the basis of how much Bitcoin it can buy and hold, also has to have another aspect to its business, which is clear, so that the treasury can be seen as being the bolt-on and booster for the company's resources and resilience. So what Forza is our treasury company. It's there to provide robustness and strength and resilience to Coincilium Group in the years ahead, because ultimately what's underpinning everything we're doing is a firm belief that Bitcoin, particularly, we don't confuse it with any other cryptocurrencies, because other cryptocurrencies are effectively currencies of projects of companies, but Bitcoin is a digital commodity. There's no company over it. So we're looking at this as the next iteration of money of real value, like digital gold. And so that gives us the resilience, and that is what's appealed to the market. And from a short-term perspective, there's been an explosion in this sector because of the lack of availability of options in the UK for retail investors to get involved with Bitcoin. It's not easy to buy it if you don't understand exactly what you're doing, and adoption has been stifled by the regulation and by the restrictions. So we come along into this explosion of interest, and that's what sort of carried us on our wave. That's starting to, it's like a dam bursting, and then in the initial stages, you get a lot of euphoria and exuberance. And now we're sort of at the stage, which happened very quickly. We're at the stage where it's starting to settle. The water's sort of flooded the plains, and now we're looking at the next phase of actually this adoption of this model.
Explosion of interest, James. But why? Take us through how a Bitcoin treasury works and what's the appeal? Why would investors not rather buy Bitcoin directly?
Yeah, so this model really started back in August 2020 with Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy. He saw during COVID the interest rates dropped, inflation was rampant, so he needed something to protect his treasury. He bought, I think, $250 million, about 20,000 Bitcoin. as the hedge against inflation and the interest rates dropping. And since his model started, it's up 3,000%. So why you say there's an interest in Bitcoin treasuries in the UK. So for me, I purchased MicroStrategy in Q4 of 2020 because there is no exchange traded fund that holds Bitcoin. You can't buy a US ETF, which launched in January 2024, and buying spot Bitcoin is quite challenging for the layman or the average retailer. So MicroStrategy was the only real exposure to Bitcoin, and it served a massive premium to the company. It was trading at a multiple to its net asset value. And as the cycle went on during the bear market, it traded below a 1xm NAV, so it was below its net asset value. But as time continued to go, the market became more and more efficient in understanding what it was. So MicroStrategy or Strategy holds over 600,000 Bitcoin now, and I think there's a top 100 list of Bitcoin treasury companies. And Coincilium sits at 70 with 182 Bitcoin, and the top 100 hold, I think, 950,000 Bitcoin collectively. So it is a race. It's a digital gold rush. It's a race to acquire as much as you can, but in an accretive dilution methodology. What I mean by that is you're trying to buy as much Bitcoin as you can, but in the way to do it is diluting your shareholders or increasing your outstanding shares. So as long as your Bitcoin per share is increasing, that's the main metric to be using to show that you're doing accretive dilution, and it will be a successful flywheel for the company. So yeah, that's the main metric to be looking at. And since I've joined in January, Coincilium started in May, and yeah, extremely happy with how everything's gone so far.
I mean, Bitcoin treasury companies are obviously pinning a lot on Bitcoin continuing to appreciate in value, James. So you already mentioned that 3,000% increase. Where do you see it headed? What's going to be supporting Bitcoin going forward?
Yeah, so Bitcoin is the only asset that has a finite supply of 21 million, and I think 19.8 million is already in circulating supply. But with this new pro-administration in the US, it's kind of given the green light to banks, institutions to say, yeah, you can now custody Bitcoin, you can buy Bitcoin, you can hold Bitcoin, and you can do it via the proxy ETFs in the US, which were the most successful ETFs of all time. So that limited supply with that institutional bid it will continue to take Bitcoin higher. You can see through the Bitcoin price action that with the corrections and drawdowns are extremely limited now. 5-10% corrections where we used to get around 30% corrections consistently. So this is quite akin to when gold and GLD, the ETF, launched back in 2004. Which saw 7 or 8 years of just consistent growth for gold. So I believe that we're at the very start of that growth and that institutional adoption. Bitcoin has around literally about a 1% adoption rate worldwide. So if you look at all the pools of capital, fixed income, US equities, real estate, they're all extremely bloated or overvalued. So Bitcoin's sitting at a $2.5 trillion market cap. Which is about 10x smaller than gold. That would be the price reference that Bitcoin would try and hit gold's market cap within the next 5 years or so, as it is similar properties to gold, but on a fundamental basis, better in every way.
Well, Malcolm, as you mentioned, Forza has been pretty active buying Bitcoin. Take us through your Bitcoin purchase strategy and how it fits with the overall group.
Sure. Well, I mean, this has to be the focus of what we're doing, and it's certainly since we effectively launched in the middle of May, which is not that long ago, but it's just moved at such a frantic rate. It seems like it could be a lifetime ago. So we've managed to accumulate through various fundraisers that we've done valuations over and above the NAV of the company, meaningfully at some stages, less meaningfully at others, but always accretive. And we've managed to do several fundraisers, which have through equity placements and retail offers, which have given us a total of 17 million, of which we've deployed pretty much most of that, bar, that's before costs, whatever. So we're sitting on 182 Bitcoin, which currently worth just over $21 million. And when the market is conducive and when we can get funding at the right terms and the right level, which has been quite aggressive up till now. We recognise the market is over the summer is probably going to slow down a bit, but nonetheless we're keen to continue to raise money at the right price to actually continue the purchasing effect. Once it's clear that there's a level of interest, it's paused a little bit now, probably because of the summer, but all the indications we're getting is that we'll kick off again in earnest once everyone's back at their desks. And obviously with a driver of the price of Bitcoin, Bitcoin goes up, everyone wants to buy it, and that's when the interest comes in. So at the moment, the market is not for the timid. It's very, very volatile, and it's, as you know, markets greed and fear. They don't see anything else. They don't see beyond that. And because we had such a huge rush up in our share price, it transpired that the fall was just as aggressive. And right now we're at sort of a rebalancing point of view. It's you have to ride these waves. You can't do much about them, because if the money's there, you take it. If it's not there at the right price, you have to have a bit of backbone and make sure that you're putting the right messages out and you're on track. You know what you're doing. And fortunately for us, we're very confident that we can actually make a very good case for our proposition going forward. So so that's really where we are. That's kind of looking at phase two, looking at the next phase where we can go again and start accumulating, but always at a kind of in a way that is accretive in value, meaningfully accretive, because we've got other investments that maybe the people who are interested in our accumulation of Bitcoin aren't focusing on, and dilution also affects that as well. So we have to make sure that we are, in as much as we can, the price makers rather than the price takers whenever possible for future rises, because that's what investors are looking for.
Well, Malcolm, congratulations on this exciting new aspect to the business. I hope you'll continue to keep us updated on your progress.
Certainly will do. Thank you very much for having us on.
Pleasure, and thank you, James. That's Coinsilium Executive Chairman Malcolm Pallay and Strategic Advisor James van Straten.